Hello everyone and welcome to the IQhub. Today we're going over an exhibit called Apples to Zucchini. And this is a really cool exhibit because it talks about the top products raised in Michigan for horticulture and floriculture crops. And then we'll also go over some cool things that we get from bees as well. Michigan's farmers take pride in growing many high-quality products for the consumer. Our diverse state ranks in the top 5 of the nation for a lot of these crops. And you can find more information about these different products at the IQhub when you come in to visit. But in the meantime, hopefully you can get around Michigan and try some of these yummy products that are made in our awesome state. Michigan agriculture contributes $91.4 billion to the state's economy each year and is second in diversity only to California. We produce a lot of things that people might not think about, especially Christmas trees, geraniums, petunias, and impatiens. We are very fortunate to live in a state that has such a wide variety of products that people can buy fresh and locally. This is the apple activity that we do with students. It's a favorite at the IQhub, and we show them how you can take apples and turn it into cider. And this is just a homemade press. I got this from a friend. You can find it online. You could get one like this at a garage sale. Something to squish the apples. Today we're using 2 types of apples, but if you were to go to an orchard and get real apple cider, they use a variety of apples. The more different apples you have, the more different flavors, the tastier the cider. So we just have 2 today. You want to wash your apples, and then if you have any of these at home, like an apple slicer or a knife, that helps make the apples into smaller chunks to make the cider easier. So we have a slicer, and my apples are already washed. So I push it down. You do not need the core. So we take the core out, and the individual slices of apples, this is what I'm talking about using your knife for, because the smaller chunks make this a lot easier when you're going to make your cider. You probably want to have the adult do this part because these items are sharp. But we took 4 apples and chopped them up, sliced them first, then chopped. And then these little pieces are going to go into cheesecloth, which we're going to use to keep the apples together so that the juice will go through the cloth and out the press, but the individual pieces like the skin or the chunks of apple will stay in the cheesecloth. I like to cut my cheesecloth a couple feet by a couple feet so that it's a good square, and I double it up, and that helps keep the apple pieces and the skin together and allows the juice to go through. It's just a little sturdier. So you dump out your apples, and like I said, we're using 4 today. Put them into the middle of your cheesecloth, and then you bundle it up. Oops, don't want the cores of the apples, right? So you bundle it up so that they're in the middle. Try to get your cheesecloth all around, and then I just give it a good twist. And Chris is helping me today because this is really hard and you need muscles. So he's my muscles. And I put my apples in the cheesecloth right down in the middle of my press. Try to get that little ball of cheesecloth flat. And put this wooden piece, which is like the plunger, down. And then Chris is going to turn the handle to depress onto the apples and get our juice. And this is a cool thing about this lesson, that we also give an opportunity for kids to work on their math skills. We talk about how many ounces are in a gallon, and then we talk about how the apples make so many ounces of cider, and how many apples it would take to actually make a gallon of cider. So sometimes older level kids working on their math like this lesson, and we can get out scrap paper, we can work on some things so that we can make sure that they get to see all parts of this lesson. So you have some agriculture, some science, and some math. And as Chris starts cranking down on the press, it takes a minute, but it's going to end up being something tasty and cool for the kids to see. Today we're using clamps to press the press onto the table, but usually we have a couple people hold it. And here comes the cider. So Chris is doing a good job. And such a beautiful color. Like I said, 2 types of apples to make a tastier cider. But we might need to try this again with some other apples to see if it makes a different color, if it makes a different flavor. And you might have to, take the clamps off so that we can, oh, my muscles is too strong for me. My clamps are so tight. So we're gonna tip this a little, Chris. And the coolest part about this is something that kids can actually see made. A lot of times there's a disconnect between, let's tip it one more time, disconnect between where their food comes from and how the kids pick it up from the grocery store. So this is how we make some apple cider at the IQhub, just to show the kids, and then we compare it with what juice looks like. So now that our cider is made, we like to show the students the difference between cider and juice. And the main thing that we show them is the color and the clarity. So here's our cider, definitely darker in color, and the clarity means that it's pretty cloudy. And this is our juice, lighter in color, but you can definitely see through it, it's more clear. So the color and the clarity are definitely things for students to compare and contrast when we're looking at our cider and our juice. And like I said, this is a fun activity to do at home, especially when kids maybe have never seen how cider is made. And the coolest part is that we can add in the math. So if this is a 5-ounce cup and it took 4 apples pressed through our cider press to make this 5-ounce cup full, let's say you have a class of 25. So 25 students all getting 5 ounces of cider is close to a gallon of cider. And so if I were to say, all right, it takes 4 apples to make this cup, and if each of the 25 students get a 5-ounce cup, that's 100 apples. So sometimes people ask me, well, why would I pick cider over juice? It's more expensive. Well, you gotta have people picking the apples, processing the apples, pressing the apples. And remember, it takes 100 apples to make a gallon of cider. I'm not sure how many apples it takes to make juice, but maybe that's why cider is a little more expensive, because of all that labor intensity, and it takes a lot of apples to make cider. So if you wanted to try some cider, next time you guys are into the IQhub, we have 2 orchards in town, Uncle John's Cider Mill and Phillips Orchard, and you can get different types of cider probably from different places because they're gonna use a different variety of apples. But either way, it's fun to do and it's yummy to try. We need to be thankful for farmers and all their hard work they put into growing these crops that we so enjoy. But don't forget about the other heroes, the honeybees. These honeybees are trying to produce honey for their hive by going around to the flowers and gathering food. But when they do that, as they land on the flowers to collect their food, they're dispersing the pollen, which goes from flower to flower and can help these plants grow into the crops that we need, like fruits, vegetables, flowers, and trees. And after the bee has collected all of its food and it's on its way back to the hive where it can make its honey, this is where another step or part of magic begins. This is an example of a honey box or a beehive that you might see on the side of the road, and people might have these stacked higher with different boxes depending on if they're trying to produce honey or if they have these bees to help pollinate their crops. This top part, this is the cover, and the cover just keeps the hives safe. Hives can be outside year-round. In the winter, in our Michigan climate, you're going to want to probably stack straw bales or something to keep them warm around it, but you can have your hives outside year-round. This is a cover with a hole in the bottom, and this just pretty much makes sure that it's going to keep the bees safe. It's right underneath the top. This is what we call the honey box, and you're going to see the honey frames inside, and depending on how big the box is, size-wise with dimensions, will determine how many frames of these honey frames you can have. And this has the wax for the honeycombs, so the bees can make the food for not only their hive, but we can also harvest some for us to have some honey. So this has a variety of frames based on the dimensions, like I said. That's the next layer. And then we have this wire here, they call it the queen excluder, and this is actually a wire mesh or like a layer so that the queen cannot go past this to get to the box with the honey. She stays below in this box to take care of the babies. So this is just a big box where the honey is going to be made on top, but the queen is below taking care of the babies. And if you notice, this is the opening in this bottom board. Bees fly in the hive from the bottom. So if you're ever driving by and wondering what they're doing, they come in from the bottom, take care of the queen, do their job. They're going to make sure that they are creating the honey to keep their hive healthy, and some for us too. And just making sure that they're all doing what they have to do pretty much for survival, as well as making us our yummy treat.